Let's get right into it. How do we make this sentence better? He knocked over the bottles. We might say he stumbled, knocking over the bottle of red wine. We could say he stumbled, kicking over the half-empty bottle of Merlot. He stumbled, kicking over the half-empty bottle of $2 Chuck. So I want you to compare the first and last sentence, and what do you notice? Why do you think he's stumbling? What is the difference between bottles and a half-empty bottle? What is the difference between red wine, Merlot, and $2 Chuck? Why would we use that kind of language? Let's look at another example. She ate dessert. She picked at a slice of cake. She poked at the chocolate cake. Half the icing scraped off the edge. She crammed the last bit of frosting down her gullet, leaving behind a pale, stale bit of angel food. So again, compare the different sentences. What do you feel about the person eating in the first sentence versus the second, third, and fourth? What do you know about the dessert that she's eating? And what do you know about the woman in each line? Let's look at another one. She ran her fingers through the girl's hair. She combed her nails through the girl's hair. She dragged her nails through the girl's tangled hair. She raked her talons through the orphan's knotted clumps of hair. Again, what can you tell about the characters in each of the lines? Is something good or bad about to happen in the first line versus the last line? Let's look at one more. He wore a white pair of shoes. He wore a beat-up set of Nikes missing a shoelace. He wore a pair of scuffed Nikes, the heel worn down to the foam. He sported a scuffed-up pair of Air Jordans, the sole flapping with each step. What do we know about the shoes in each of these sentences? By the last sentence, what do we know about what he thinks of the shoes? Is he proud of them, embarrassed of them, or just wearing them? And with each of these questions, on each of these sentences, and each of these examples, how do you know? One of the first things Shawn Coyne, the founder and creator of StoryGrid, taught me about writing is that specificity creates universality. The more specific you make all of the words in your sentences, the more likely your writing is going to improve. When you get more specific with your writing, you get three things. First, you get resonance. You create a story that feels deeply personal and emotionally engaging. Second, you get clarity. By being specific with your writing, it forces you to focus on the things that matter and what the reader needs to know. And then lastly, you get authenticity. By giving specific details, it makes the story seem real. It grounds characters, settings, and conflict in a tangible world that the reader actually believes. But what do I mean when I use this word specific? I mean choosing precise, concrete details that are deliberate and purposeful. Specificity isn't about piling on random facts. It's about selecting the exact details that communicate something essential to your story, your characters, or your setting. So how do you do this? How do you put specificity into your writing? It's 3 easy steps. Step 1, use specific verbs. Ate versus picked at versus crammed. When you use the word ate, all you know is that something was eaten. When you get to crammed, then you have a lot more information about what is actually happening, the way the food is going in the mouth. So you're getting more specific, which means you're giving more information to the reader. Same thing comparing wore versus sported. He wore the shoes versus he sported the shoes. When you sport the shoes, it means you're proud of them, that you're excited to be wearing them. Just by switching out one word, you give more information to the reader. Ran versus dragged versus raked. When you use the word ran, I'm not sure what that means. It's hard for me to picture it. When I switch to the verb raked, I get a much clearer sense of how the woman is running her hands through the matted hair. Step 2 is to use specific nouns. Again, we are trying to give as much relevant information to the reader in as few words as possible. So instead of the word dessert, we use the word or phrase angel food. Instead of shoes, we use Air Jordans. Instead of bottles or wine or Merlot, we use $2 Chuck. Instead of fingers or nails, we use talons. Because with each of those words, as we progress down that, we give more and more information to the reader. When we talk about $2 Chuck, we now know the person buying the wine has bought the cheapest possible wine they can get their hands on, as opposed to the more vague nouns, Merlot, or even wine. Step 3. Add necessary descriptors. So only add adverbs and adjectives when you need to give more information to the reader, but you can't find a verb or a noun that gives that information to them for you. So for instance, there is no word for hair that would infer tangled or knotted. So we use the adjective tangled or knotted that goes along with hair. If we look at chocolate cake, does the reader really need to know that the cake is chocolate? What is important about the word chocolate that the reader actually needs to know? I would say in most cases, the reader doesn't need to know that. But I do think it's important to let the reader know that the cake is pale and stale, because it says something about the person eating the cake that they're eating a pale, stale piece of cake. If we wanted to add an adverb in one of the sentences, we might say they idly raked the fingers through the hair, because idly adds a tone of taking their time, they're not in a hurry, they're not being mean, that you can't quite get into the verb along with raked. And so that adverb is a good adverb because it gives more relevant information to the reader. So to make your writing better, add specificity, and you do it in 3 ways. First, use specific verbs, then use specific nouns, and finally, add necessary descriptors. If this has been helpful to you, you might enjoy our writing training. You can see more at storygrid.com/workshop. I'm going to keep doing more videos like this, so make sure you subscribe to see those in the future. If you want to know more about me and StoryGrid, it's down in the description. See you next time.